My name is Barbara Taggart. I'm Superintendent of Hershey Bend National Military Park in Daviston, Alabama. And I'm pretty sure you're asking me where that is. I'm used to hearing about that. That's located, if you know anything about Alexander City or Auburn. You should if you're a football fan. Auburn is about 45 minutes from there, and it commemorates the Battle of Hershey Bend of 1814, when Andrew Jackson invaded the Creek territory and massacred those Native Americans there. So we tell that story, but also I'm working on trying to include the African American experience as well, since that story has never been told. I wanted to take my moment in time to do a couple of things. One is to take you on a real quick tour of the sites that remembers the modern civil rights movement. And we're going to go through several states: Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Arkansas, even Washington, D.C. And I want you to put on your comfortable shoes, get your cameras out, don't want you to touch anything. And we're going to do this real quickly because I was told this tour is only 10 minutes. But very quickly I want to show you how we are remembering the modern civil rights movement. And I really wanted to begin with the role of the military, in particular the Tuskegee Airmen. So we're in Alabama, in Tuskegee, Alabama. In fact, let me take a pause for 1 second and acknowledge, and I want you to show your gratitude to a Tuskegee Airman that's sitting in the back of the room. I want to acknowledge him because I had the honor and the privilege of helping to create the Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Site. He was one of the many Tuskegee Airmen that I had the pleasure of interviewing, getting to know, telling the story. They didn't give me any gray hairs, which was really unusual during that time. And they knew exactly how they wanted to be remembered and commemorated, and they wanted to make sure that their story would not be lost to present and future generations. So if you're in Tuskegee, which you, in your mind right now, you are, you will see that we have restored that site back to its original appearance in Moulton Field. But why do I start the modern civil rights movement with Tuskegee? Well, primarily because of the fact that we put it into the historic context of the role of the NAACP and the black press between the early 1900s and 1950s. The NAACP, which was founded in 1909 to combat Jim Crow, was instrumental in changing the structure of this country and challenging the structure of this country when it came to the African American experience, particularly when it came to segregation. And therefore, through their efforts, they attacked the legal aspects of desegregation. And so with that, with the help of the black press, they acknowledged the role of the Tuskegee Airmen. Yes, at that park we talk about the 99th Squadron, the famous air pilots who were known as the Red Tails, and their role in the military. I'm sorry. Okay. So, thank you. See? Their role in the military, but also we talk about how after World War II, that with the help of the NAACP and within the Tuskegee Airmen themselves, they helped to segregate the military in 1948 through an executive order that was passed by President Harry S. Truman. The NAACP, with that success of desegregating the military, then moved their efforts to public accommodations, and also public education. So now we're going to move from Alabama real quickly over to Kansas, Topeka. Are you with me? Yeah. Okay, all right. And so there in Topeka, the Park Service has now preserved the site of the school in which Linda Brown and her family, along with other black families, were used as a test case in the United States Supreme Court of Brown versus Board of Education. And this became one of the most significant civil rights cases of its era. In fact, it still has its imprint on today, as we're talking about equal education in the public school systems. It didn't also stop at Brown versus Board, but we also look at Central High School in Arkansas as well. So now we're in Little Rock. Keep up with me now. I'm going to be taking pictures of Brown, but come on, keep up with me. Okay, got me? Right behind me? All right, right behind me, okay. You get to Little Rock, Arkansas, you're going to see the Central High School, and again, they're one of the most significant moments of the civil rights movement when we talk about the segregation of education, or we talk about the role of the Little Rock Nine. And there, the National Park Service talks about how that movement, or that turmoil that was there in Arkansas, in Little Rock, Arkansas, helped change America as well. Probably the most iconic figure in the civil rights movement is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So now I'm going to take you to Atlanta, Georgia. And as you're taking pictures, I want you to look at the birth home first. This is where I got my start in the National Park Service 36 years ago, helping to get this park started. So I'm not going to take you on I'm not going to give you the dollar tour today. It's only got 10 minutes. But very quickly, Dr. King was born in this house that you see here. He was one of 3 children of Martin Luther King Sr., Reverend Martin Luther King Sr., and he was born the second child on January 15, 1929. His sister, Christine, was still living, and his brother, A.D., was also born in this home in the same room. And that room was restored by his mother on the day of his birth. We also commemorate in this district the church that he preached. His family preached here for 81 years. Starting with his grandfather, Reverend Williams, up until his death in 1960, Dr. King's death in 1968, and then later on, Daddy King served there until his death in 1984. Dr. King was buried on this site here next door to Ebenezer Baptist Church, and also after the death of Mrs. Coretta Scott King, she was laid to rest next to him. We also talk about Auburn Avenue, Sweet Auburn Avenue, and how it influenced him as a young boy, and the people there who influenced him. I would love to take you down the streets, down Auburn Avenue right now, but I just don't have the time. I can tell you about every single building on that street and how it influenced him, but we don't have time, so stop taking pictures, just move on. Now we're in Washington, D.C., and again, we commemorate Martin Luther King Jr., again, one of the most iconic figures in the modern civil rights movement, one of the persons who played on the consciousness of America. He was the spokesperson. He was the person who gave us inspiration for the struggle that we were going through in the times that we wanted to change America, and also be not recognized as second-class citizens, but first-class citizens. Now we're going to move on to Anniston, Alabama. And in 1961, John Lewis and others, John Lewis, who is a congressman now, and I had the pleasure of working with him on several projects. We want to talk about the Freedom Rides, where the Freedom Rides attested a number of legal cases that was brought before the courts through the NAACP and other organizations. It is in Anniston, Alabama, where you see the Greyhound bus station there to your upper left. that we're restoring back to its original appearance. And again, I'm having the privilege of working on that project. It is also at the site where the bus was burned. After the white segregationists and Ku Klux Klan attacked the bus at the Greyhound bus station, slashed the tires, threatened the passengers, and 5 miles down the road, they bombed the bus that you see burning here. It is at this bus burn site, and again, I'm going to give props to the Mega Psi Phi fraternity because they placed a marker there so that we know exactly where the spot was where the bus burning site took place. Now we're going to go real quickly an hour away from Anniston, going up the road to Birmingham. And it was in 1963 that I want you to see these places that were a part of the civil rights movement during that era. You may probably remember the Children's Crusade when the children were attacked by vicious dogs and the water hoses from the Birmingham Fire Department. You also probably remember, if we're going to go across the street at the Kelly Ingram Park, where all that took place. Also, you probably remember shortly after that, that the 16th Street Baptist Church was bombed and 4 little girls were killed in September of 1963. During that period between May and September, actually it was a little bit longer, there were a number of organized movements within the city. And the Reverend Shuttlesworth asked or invited Dr. King to come and help to segregate Birmingham, which was his nickname because of all the bomb threats and also the bombing of buildings in the city there. You see Dr. King